You betrayed this family!
How could you do this to us, Amara? You stole everything from us!
You'll pay for this! This isn't over!
My family called me trash and threw me out. They didn't know my Korean Mafia boss had already put the building in my name. The night my family called me trash, I was standing on the porch of the house I grew up in, holding the only box they let me take. Behind me, the lock turned. My mother's voice came through the wood, flat and final. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Amara. You brought this on yourself." 28 years old, soaked to the bone, and the only thing waiting for me at the end of that driveway was a bus bench and a phone at 11%. What none of them knew, what I'd been carrying alone for 6 weeks, in the lining of my coat, was that I'd already filed the paperwork that could make the deed to that building mine. I just didn't know yet whether it had gone through. And the man pulling up to that curb wasn't the reason any of this was happening. He was about to become the reason nothing could stop it. To understand how I got to that porch, you have to go back to a diner my grandmother built with her own hands, and a piece of paper she left behind that none of us had ever fully read. My grandmother, Ruth Vance, opened Vance's kitchen in 1989 and paid off the loan herself, working the grill 6 days a week until her hands shook too much to hold a spatula. She kept a chalkboard by the register that said, "Pay what you can, we'll never ask twice." That chalkboard is still there. She raised me more than my mother did. Denise, my mother, married my stepfather, Marcus, when I was 6, and by the time I was a teenager, our house had a quiet system to it. There was the daughter who belonged, and the daughter who was tolerated. The one who belonged was Jada, my half-sister, 3 years younger, pretty in the way that got complimented at church, smart in the way that got mentioned at dinner parties, certain from a young age that things were simply handed to her, because they always had been. I was the one who showed up. Extra shifts, medication runs, the version of family loyalty that gets noticed only when it stops. When Grandma Ruth died 6 years ago, she left the diner to all of us through a family trust, one that, on its face, required unanimous agreement from every Vance with a stake in it before the building could be sold. Denise had wanted to cash it out within a year. I was the one vote standing in the way. So for 6 years, I worked 2 jobs to keep the place breathing. 5 nights a week at the Belmorn, the kind of restaurant where the wine list has its own binder, and on my days off, I opened Vance's kitchen at 6 in the morning and ran it until close. I never took a salary from the diner. Letting it die felt like losing Grandma twice. Denise called it stubbornness. Marcus called it sentimental. Jada, 25 now and working toward a law degree her parents were quietly funding with money that used to be earmarked for the diner's repairs, called it Amara playing martyr because nobody ever gave her anything else to be. I wasn't holding on purely out of goodness. Some of it was guilt. Some of it was grief. But I showed up, every time, and in my family, consistency stops being a virtue and becomes a baseline, and then it becomes invisible. I met King Duyan on a Tuesday morning in March, almost a year before that night on the porch. He came into the Belmorn alone, no reservation, no entourage, which the hostess found strange enough to mention before she'd even seated him. He ordered black coffee and asked for the check before he'd finished it, which struck me as odd, until I realized, 3 Tuesdays later, when he did the exact same thing, that he wasn't there for the coffee at all. Table 6 faced the window, and at exactly 8:40 every Tuesday morning, the early light hit the street in a way he apparently found worth sitting still for. I asked him, the 4th Tuesday, half joking, why he ordered a coffee he never drank. He looked at me for a long moment, the kind of look that made the question feel bigger than I'd meant it, and said, I didn't think anyone would notice. I told him noticing was the job. You learn to read a table the way you'd read weather. Which one am I? He asked. I didn't answer that. I refilled his water and walked away, because some questions don't belong to a waitress on a Tuesday morning, no matter what's folded under the saucer. It took months before I understood who King Duyan actually was, from the way the manager's posture changed when his car was spotted, the way certain reservations got quietly cancelled to keep table 6 open, the way one of the line cooks crossed himself, half joking, the first time he learned whose food he'd been plating. By then it didn't matter. I already knew the version of him that remembered, from one offhand comment, that my grandmother used to make a particular peach cobbler, and who showed up 4 days later having tracked down the recipe from a woman 2 states away who'd worked Ruth's kitchen in the 90s, just to ask, carefully, if he'd gotten it close. I didn't tell my family about him. Denise would have seen dollar signs. Jada would have seen an opportunity. Marcus would have seen a problem to manage. None of them would have seen him, or me. So for almost a year, he existed in a room of my life with no door connecting it to any of theirs. 8 months before the porch, I found something that changed everything, and I told almost no one. I was looking for an old photo in a recipe box of Grandma Ruth's that had sat untouched in a closet since she died, and underneath the recipe cards was a folder, the full trust document. What Denise had always called the trust was a 4-page summary. This was the original, 11 pages, with a clause near the end that none of us had ever seen, because none of us had ever looked past page 1. The clause said that if one beneficiary worked continuously in the diner for a minimum of 5 years, while the other beneficiaries provided no documented labor, capital contribution, or active management, operational control and primary ownership would transfer to that beneficiary, contingent on filing a formal notice of continuous operation with the county within a defined window. I read it 4 times. Then I did the math. I'd been working there, full-time, unpaid, for 6 years. I didn't say anything to anyone. For the next several months, I quietly built a file, 6 years of register logs, shift schedules in my own handwriting, vendor invoices I'd personally paid, repair receipts for the walk-in freezer, and the health code fix, every dollar I'd put into that building that nobody else had. I found an estate attorney 2 bus transfers away, paid her in cash from tips, and asked her to review it. This is strong, she told me. Stronger than strong. File it now, before anything changes hands. 6 weeks before that Sunday dinner, I signed the notice of continuous operation, and filed it with the county myself. The clock started ticking the moment it was recorded, a 60-day window during which, if no competing claim was filed against the parcel, my claim would convert automatically into full ownership. I told Duyan almost nothing. Just once, a few weeks in, I said, I found something in Grandma's papers. I think there might be a way through this. I can't really explain it yet. He didn't push. He just said, then I won't ask, and let it sit there between us, untouched, the way he let most things about my family sit untouched. The trouble with the diner accelerated while my clock was already running. Marcus came to me with a folder of his own, a developer interested in the whole block, a number he kept calling life-changing. I told him I'd think about it, which in my family means no, but I'm not ready for the fight yet. Over the following weeks, Denise raised it at every dinner, framed as concern for my future. Jada raised it with the specific edge of someone who'd recently discovered exactly how much law school cost. Some of us have real plans, Jada said one night, looking at my Belmorn uniform. Not, whatever this is. I said nothing. What I was thinking, the entire time, was, it doesn't matter what I sign. In 19 days, this stops being your decision either way. I didn't say that. I'd learned that anything I said in that house eventually got used against me, and I wasn't about to hand them a reason to look closer before my window closed. The Sunday it all came apart, Denise called a family meeting, which in our house meant a meal where the verdict had already been decided, and I was the only one not told yet. The developer's offer had a 48-hour deadline. Marcus had sale paperwork drawn up, for my quarter of the trust too, signature line printed in advance of anyone asking how I felt. We need this done tonight, Denise said, sliding the papers across the table. I looked at them. Then at her. No, I said. The table went still, the specific stillness of people who'd already exhaled, expecting yes, and now didn't know what to do with the breath they'd taken back. Excuse me. Denise said. I'm not signing it. With what money, Amara? Jada said, and laughed. You're a waitress. You think you can hold a building hostage on a tip jar? The trust gives me options, I said, true, just not the ones they thought. The trust, Denise repeated, and something in her face went colder than anger. You know what I think that trust really was? Mama's way of keeping a leash on this family from the grave. And you've worn that leash like it was a gift, because nobody ever gave you anything else to hold on to. You have nothing, she went on, voice climbing. No husband, no degree, no savings. You sleep under our roof when your shifts run late, and you have the nerve to sit there and tell us no, over a building worth more than everything you've ever owned in your life. Mom. Don't call me that right now. She swept a hand toward me, my uniform, my exhaustion, the cobbler container I was still holding from a 12-hour shift. You're not holding on to her memory, Amara. You're just trash that refuses to take itself out. The word landed and just sat there. Nobody corrected her. That was the part that stayed with me longer than the word itself. Marcus didn't say Denise, enough. Jada didn't flinch, if anything, something in her face settled, like she'd been waiting for someone else to say it first. Get out, Denise said. Tonight. I didn't have a speech. I packed one box, walked back through a kitchen where nobody got up, and Marcus said one thing as I reached the door, quiet, almost to himself, this is on you, kid. You made this happen. I stepped onto the porch, into rain nobody had noticed start, and behind me, the deadbolt turned. If you've ever stood in a doorway and realized, all at once, that the people inside had already decided you were the problem, drop the name of your city in the comments. I want to know how far this one travels tonight. I didn't call Duyun because I needed rescuing. I called because it was 11:40, my phone had 11%, and his was the only number I trusted not to ask questions before telling me to come over. He picked up on the second ring, instantly awake the way some people are when a voice tells them something is necessary. Amara. I'm okay, I said, the first lie of the night, and the least convincing one I've ever told. I just need somewhere to stay tonight. Where are you? Not a question. I gave him the cross streets, and 11 minutes later the SUV pulled up. He got out himself. Didn't ask about the rain or the box. Just took the box out of my arms like it weighed something, and once the doors shut and the world went quiet and dry, he asked what happened. I told him everything, the dinner, the sale, my no. And then, because there wasn't much dignity left to protect, I told him the word. He didn't speak for a long moment. Rain ran down the windows in slow lines, streetlights smearing orange across his face, and I watched something move behind his eyes I'd never seen there before. Say it again, he said. Quiet. Careful. Duyun. Say it again, Amara YA. She called me trash, I said. Told me to get out. They all just sat there. He looked away, out at the house with its one lit window, and for the first time I understood, in my body, and not just in whispers, exactly what kind of man I'd spent a year quietly loving. There's something else, I said, because it suddenly felt important that he know. 6 weeks ago, I filed something with the county. About the building. My window closes in 6 days. I don't even know if it's still alive, if someone could still kill it without me knowing. He was quiet for a moment. Then let's find out, he said. Trust me. Sleep. I'll have someone look first thing. I slept in a guest room that smelled like cedar, and the next morning, over coffee I didn't ask for, Duyun told me what looking had turned up. 3 weeks ago, he said, a holding company filed a competing lien against the Vance's kitchen parcel. Timed 2 days before your notice would have posted publicly, which means whoever filed it knew it was coming before you told anyone. That's not possible. I told no one. You told a lawyer, he said. And lawyers' offices aren't as quiet as people think, if someone's paying attention to the right one. The holding company belongs to the same firm representing the developer Marcus brought to the table. He turned his cup slowly, once. March the 14th. $47,000. Account ending 6271. That's the consulting fee that's been funding part of Jada's tuition for the last year. Marcus has been paid to deliver this building since before you ever found that trust clause. And the lien. Withdrawn. 2 nights ago, before it could attach to the record. Your filing cleared its window clean. The county recorded the transfer Friday. He looked at me steadily. I didn't file your claim, Amara. I didn't write a check that put your name on anything. Someone tried to make sure your claim never had the chance to clear, and I made sure it did. That's the whole of it. They are going to think you did all of this to punish them. What they think isn't something I can manage, he said. What I can tell you is that as of Friday, the deed has one name on it. Yours. What happens next, that's not mine to decide. It was never going to be. By the time I got back to the diner that afternoon, the whole family was there. Marcus was holding an envelope, already opened, the county's confirmation, my name in the ownership line where 3 other names used to sit. Amara, Denise said, voice gone thin. We need to talk about this. This has to be a mistake, Marcus said. Some clerical. It's not a mistake, I said. I filed a continuous operation claim under the trust 6 weeks ago. The window closed Friday. The building is mine. All of it. If there's a part of you that's spent years waiting for someone to find out exactly what you're worth, comment not trash below. Let's see how many of us there really are. Marcus recovered first, the way men like him always do, by reaching for negotiation. Okay. Fine, you exercise some clause, that's your right. But this is still a family business. You keep ownership, we keep operating it the way we always. The way you always have, I said, was living off a building I kept alive for 6 years while telling me I had nothing. The door opened behind me. I didn't need to turn around. I felt the room change before I heard him, the particular silence of people recalculating, in real time, exactly how much danger they might be standing in. Marcus's color drained. He knew the name. He'd been trying for 3 weeks to reach the developer's law firm, and getting nothing back, and now here was the reason, walking in wearing a coat that cost more than the diner's monthly rent. Mr. Kang, Marcus said, 3 registers lower than he'd started. I wasn't planning to be here, Dooyun said, eyes moving across the room, Denise, Jada, Marcus, the envelope, before settling on me, softening for 1 second, then turning back with nothing soft in them at all. But I heard there was a conversation happening about a building, and I thought it might help if everyone understood exactly whose it is. There's no issue here, Marcus said quickly. We were just. You called her trash, Dooyun said. Not a question. Flat, simple, the kind of sentence that doesn't need volume. Nobody answered. In a house she's been quietly subsidizing for 6 years, he continued, someone called her trash, and put her out into the rain with 1 box. I'd like to know which of you said it. Denise's mouth opened, closed. It was me. And the rest of you sat there. Nobody answered that either. One more thing, Marcus, Dooyun said, almost gently. March 14th. $47,000. The lien your friends filed 3 weeks ago, to try to keep this exact conversation from happening, withdrawn 2 nights ago. You can call your contacts at the firm if you'd like to confirm. They won't pick up. They haven't been picking up for anyone, on anything, since Tuesday. I knew, standing there, that revenge would feel good for exactly as long as it took to walk out the door afterward, and that whatever I chose next, I'd be the one carrying it, not them. Nobody's getting thrown out today, I said. Marcus exhaled, fast and audible. But things change, starting now. And they are not negotiable. I laid out the terms. Marcus would repay the $47,000 into the diner's operating account, sign a formal relinquishment of any management role, and work the floor, grill, dishes, whatever was needed, with zero authority over decisions, while an independent accountant audited 6 years of books neither he nor Denise had ever let me see in full. Denise didn't get a private apology. She got the lunch rush. I asked her to say, in front of the regulars at the counter, people who'd known Grandma Ruth, people who'd watched me work that diner for 6 years, exactly what she'd called me, and exactly why it wasn't true. No excuses, no, but you have to understand. She did it. Her voice shook through the whole thing, and old Mr. Aubrey at the counter just reached over and patted her hand once she was done, which I think undid her more than anything I could have said. Jada didn't get a speech either. She got a schedule. Tuesday and Thursday closing shifts, starting that week, and a conversation, the real one, finally, the one we'd never had, where she sat across from me in the back booth and said, quieter than I'd heard her in years, "I don't think I ever once asked you how you were doing. In 6 years." I told her that was true. She didn't argue. Her tuition, going forward, was hers to figure out, the same way mine always had been. 4 months later, the chalkboard by the register still says pay what you can, we'll never ask twice. I added a line under it in Grandma's handwriting, copied from an old recipe card, some debts aren't about money. We don't forget who showed up. On a Tuesday morning, table 6 was empty when I unlocked the door, and at 8:40, the light came through the window exactly the way it always had, and the door opened, and Duyan walked in and sat down in the same seat he'd sat in for a year, and for the first time, ordered coffee and actually drank it. "You're early," I said. "I wanted to be here for the light," he said. "Same as always." I sat down across from him with my own cup. "You know," I said, "you didn't give me my worth. You only made sure they couldn't steal what was already mine." "I know," he said. "That's why the deed only carries one name. Now that you know what I chose, would you have done the same? Comment yes if you'd have let them stay. Comment no if you wouldn't have. And if this one got to you, tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far it traveled."